right, you little gremlins, you wanted Abigail, you get Abigail. I have gone to great lengths to avoid all details about this movie other than knowing that it's a horror movie starring Melissa Barrera with a ballerina that has some kind of supernatural element. And I am so glad I stuck with that. Melissa's kind of killing it with the horror movies this year between this and Your Monster. I definitely prefer her in the more comedic role of Your Monster, but really enjoyed her here too. I know I have my feelings about Sam in Scream, but the way that she was removed from those movies, fired from those movies, is BS, so I'm just really happy to see people enjoying Abigail. This one was also directed by those two guys who did the last two Scream movies that I obviously have problems with, but I really like Ready or Not, and even the writing team's work is stuff that I've really enjoyed in the past, so I had hopes for this one. Honestly, just stay away from the franchises, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. And Abigail feels like a horror movie that they plucked out of the early 2000s, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean that in the best way. It's like, not that it feels like it was set in that era specifically, but just that it had characteristics of what horror movies, and I guess maybe just some movies in general, felt like back then. I'm positive that lots of other things also apply to this, but there's just something about the setup, the pacing, the cast of characters each having very distinct traits that feels like it pulled me back to those movies in my like high school and middle school days where it was really common to have like set characters like the muscle, the ditz, the nerd, and so on. Obviously that's been a thing in movies across the entire timeline that movies have existed, including the last 20 years since the new millennium, but it's that combined with some other elements that just really felt like I was just wrapped in the new millennium. And while I did end up really enjoying this, I do think the movie has some issues, especially with character logistics, repeatedly making the same mistakes and doing things that just don't make sense. I also don't love some of the character motivations and what like the larger idea of this movie is trying to tap into, but I do still think that it made for an interesting way to modernize this style of story. So no spoiler premise, and that means literally less details than what the actual synopsis for the movie would be, is that a group of criminals are brought together to orchestrate the kidnap of a young girl in the hopes of extorting money from her father, who is apparently quite wealthy. But as the night continues on, the identity of her father starts to cause some concern as the house starts to reveal some secrets and things turn violent. There's a very good chance that whatever I've ended up titling this video gives away The Thing, but it was all over the trailers and the description that I ignored for months, so I will take no blame in this. I'd also like to think that if you're here, you've maybe already seen the movie. But if for some reason you haven't and you want to, go watch the movie first, then come back here and we'll have it'll be like we're having a little chat and you can see if we agree on things. And if you're someone who likes full breakdowns and movie commentaries, subscribe for more if you end up enjoying. But before diving in, this video was brought to you by you, my lovely Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members, with a special little shout out to the latest Jedi Knight level patron, Jay, or Jai, I am sorry, I'm thinking Jay, and Trey Contreras. Well, let's dive into the movie, which means spoilers, so this is your chance to leave, because this movie really just kicks into things. We immediately start with some super intense Swan Lake music, which I love. There's no build-up, no showing how the gang got together. We're just dropped right into the mission at hand, which seems to be kidnapping this little girl. And man, I had no idea that Angus Cloud was in this. Looks like this is his last posthumous piece of work, though Freaky Tales has only played at film festivals. I did really enjoy that one, so keep an eye out for it. So we've got multiple teams working here. We got Kathryn Newton, who also is having a great year. I didn't end up loving Lisa Frankenstein the way that I really thought I was going to and hoped I would, but people are definitely vibing, which is great. She seems to be the tech hacker of the group, while Angus is the driver. They also have the guy who played Lucky in 1001, great movie, who seems to be the lookout sniper. Then the second team, which is Melissa and Dan Stevens, who is also having a solid year with this, Godzilla, sadly another yet to be officially released horror movie called Cuckoo, which also ended up falling short, sadly, but he and Hunter Schafer were fantastic in it. And their third is Kevin Durand, who is great at playing menacing characters, but also great at goofy muscle guy. And thankfully, he's the latter in this one. So they break into the house, kidnap her, and bring her back to this spooky ancient mansion that for some reason seems to be abandoned, where they meet up with Lambert, played by Gus Fring. Truly a stacked cast here, good for them. This is really just that classic style heist, a group of people who all do crime, but none of them really know who anyone else is. No real names, he just ends up giving them all names from Sinatra's Rat Pack, no backstories, avoid interpersonal fraternization, 24 hours in and out, everyone gets $7 million. So we don't really know anything about them, but they definitely make sure to let us know that Melissa has a kid when they have to turn in their cell phones and we get a glimpse of her screen. And I'm not sure I love the look that Lambert gives when he notices that. But it's supposed to be pretty easy. You babysit the kid for 24 hours, Melissa being the only one actively allowed to talk to her to avoid too many points of identification, while Lambert handles the rest. Which I personally have a lot of questions about, like, how do you know this is only going to take 24 hours? It's not like they're siphoning money off the internet or hacking into a Bitcoin account. They're doing a ransom. They don't even know who the kid's dad is, which means they don't know who they're extorting. I feel like I'd insist upon knowing that, because if the payout is that large, dude's probably either very powerful or very dangerous. But I suppose if the payout is that high, they might just be happier being ignorant as possible.
See you in 24 hours, my lovely pack of rats.
Now, just because they don't know each other doesn't mean they don't try. Angus here, now Dean, has been trying to lay the moves on Sammy by trying to peg who everyone is, and is wrong about literally every assessment he makes, which Joey proves by almost instantly nailing everyone down. Franks is an ex-detective, Rickles a former Marine, Peter's hired muscle from Quebec who probably used to get bullied a lot. They really like throwing little jabs at him there at the chip on his shoulder. Sammy's a rich girl who thinks her hands aren't dirty because she does it all from a computer, and Dean's not a professional at all, which is probably why he's smoking so much weed on the job. But then Frank flips it all back on her.
And you are a junkie. You in recovery or something? How many days you got? We gonna be worrying about you?
No.
But even without the character backgrounds, they all have these very distinct traits that you can point at, with Melissa being the bigger outlier here because she's that central protagonist. Not a bad thing by any means, it just lends itself to a very particular style of horror and heist movies. Just as an opposite example, just in case I'm not making it clear enough, take something like Talk to Me. All those teens have their own traits and personalities, but they feel like natural, fleshed out individuals and genuine teenagers. It's not like you could point at any individual one of them and be like, okay, that's the really nerdy one, that's the music one, versus this, where it's like, that's the weed guy, the goofy muscle guy with the chip on his shoulder, the quirky tech girl. And I just feel like those style of characters are really fun in this type of movie. So again, not a detraction, just something that was interesting to see, and I think they used it really well. Either way, being called a junkie definitely rattles Joey, so she goes to check on the kid and does two things that I find pretty dumb. First, she takes off the kid's blindfold, even with most of her face covered, probably not worth the risk with this much money on the table. And two, she loosens her handcuffs. Now, I get that she obviously has no reason to think that this kid could cause her harm, which seems to be what's going on here based on the poster. But even without that, kids have very malleable little joints and bones. So even if this is just a regular 12-year-old girl, she could just like clench in her hand and pull that right off. And I could just see somebody accidentally severely harming her if she tries to run away, like one of them already tried to punch her out, or she could just break out and leave. But it's okay, guys. Joey pinky promises that no one's gonna hurt her. Abigail's a bit weird though. She starts asking if Joey has kids, which is kind of a weird tactic for a 12-year-old. Like, I know that is the thing you're supposed to do in a kidnapping situation. Try to make yourself seem more human to your kidnapper, but the kid was going in on those detail questions.
I don't really know about kid stuff.
Oh yeah, Abigail? You don't really know about kid stuff at 12? How long have you been 12? A while? And while Joey doesn't want to know anything about the dad, Abigail does let her know that her dad probably won't care enough to pay the ransom, thought he wanted kids, then lost interest, and that's why she was so easy to kidnap. And then hits her with this.
Joey?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about what's gonna happen to you.
Ooh, that was good. I really love that. Excellent delivery. And it actually rattles Joey, so she goes to ask Frank if he's sure he doesn't know anything about the dad, because even if it is bullshit, he must be someone important to have enough money to make the situation worth it. Like, before even accepting this role, I would have instantly assumed some kind of major criminal, so he decides to get to the bottom of it. Instantly breaking the one rule of Joey being the only one allowed contact and fucking up by showing his face because he didn't realize that Joey'd taken the blindfold off. So that escalates him into some violence because she clearly saw him, but he gets a name out of her. Her dad is
Christophe Lazar?
The fuck did you say?
And the second he hears that name, he's out. Lazar seems to be this urban legend level crime boss, and kidnapping his kid seems to guarantee a hell of a lot worse than death.
What if we just give her back and say sorry?
Oh, yeah. Here's your daughter, Mr. fucking Antichrist.
Let's play a round of golf sometime.
Fuck you, Frank.
Incredible. So they all want to bail, but at this point think they've probably accidentally given out too many details if she overheard anything they've been saying or if any of them get caught. So because of that and the payday, they decide to stick it out because they could at least use the money to disappear, and they don't think Lambert would have contracted the job if he didn't think it was possible. Well, he might have if he felt like he made enough separation between himself and the people who actually did the kidnapping if things do go wrong, or if he's involved with this being a setup, which I kind of wondered after his reaction to her phone background. Then just how weird weird it was for him already knowing it would just be a 24-hour thing. But they decide to start scoping the place out, and Joey comes across a library because these very unusual metal gate blinds keep slamming together trying to shut. So feeling pretty confident that that means the supernatural element is vampires, creepy old house, metal shutters that completely block out the sun, weird kid, then this statue that looks an awful lot like Abigail and what I assume would be her dad. Why is no one questioning the massive mansion estate that seems to be abandoned enough for them to hide out in it but still has power? And while she's finding that, Dean stumbles on painted walls of the house that have these dragon things flying above it before it shows a young girl that looks almost identical to Abigail with a man, which he also instantly clocks but then just keeps wandering alone. I think I probably would have tried to have a chat with someone about why there seems to be a painting of the kid we just kidnapped, but he'll never have time to tell anyone because he starts getting messed with. And the second he turns to leave that room thinking it was just rats, he gets grabbed. Gone too soon, man. I really just wanted some hijinks with him. And because he's already messed with Sammy, she takes her time to wander down and check on the situation, and I really like how this scene played out. She walks in, no one in the kitchen. Doesn't see anyone in that side room either, or his body, but by the time she turns around, like seconds later, his body's propped up at the table, decapitated. So something in this house is messing with them, and it is probably Abigail, and I really just love how they handled this. Like, they could have just made him disappear or have her stumble on the body on the floor, but no, they gave us theatrics. We love theatrics. So this makes the gang even more concerned about the prospects of this being Lazar, because not only is he just this menacing, unseen enigma, he also is known for having a brutal hitman called Valdez, who has a reputation for ripping apart bodies, stealing organs, and specifically decapitating people, and managed to achieve some of this in impossible situations, like somehow scaling up a 23-story building and breaking into a room and killing people without cops on either side or at the door hearing. Easy to see why Lazar and his crew are the stuff of legends. Though I love that Pete is just instantly thinking about how the money would need to be split less ways now.
You welcome to my share, Pete. You could be the richest hairless man in America.
So after checking to make sure that Abigail is still there, which she is, and is very odd because if this is her dad's hitman come to rescue her, it would be kind of weird just to have left her there, but Rickles decides he's had enough and goes to leave, which is when they realize that the entire house is barricaded shut. The whole thing is a trap. So Joey goes to ask Abigail more questions just to see if someone else might have gone into the room other than her and Frank, and that leads to a moment that I feel is just so very dumb. Abigail tells Joey that Frank said his name was really Valdez, which she just believes? They were literally just freaking out in the hallway outside her door about someone named Valdez. Like, this is very clearly her trying to break the trust within the group. And if she knows enough about her dad to make threats of bodily harm, she should probably know who her dad's hitman is. And why would her dad's hitman threaten her? It makes no damn sense. Stuff that's a lot easier to swallow in a standalone horror movie, and much less so in a beloved franchise. But she and Rickles just instantly believe it and come up with a plan to try and deal with Frank. They also make sure to let us know that these two have some like romantic chemistry with one another, even though I don't really see it or feel it or care. And I'm led to care even less when the second they split off, something rips half his face and jugular off in a flash. Very cool scene though. He's just kind of standing there for a while, like gurgling and not moving. So that was fun. That was fun. What is wrong with you? But, she quickly runs down to accuse Frank of being Valdez.
Why'd you do it? Bring us here to kill us.
And Frank might be a dick, but believing the kid in this situation is dumb as fuck, Joey. You were supposed to be the thinker here, Joey.
The girl, though, she's fucking inspired, turning us against each other like this.
I believe her.
And that's dumb. Thankfully not dumb enough to completely shut down the fun I'm having with the movie, but enough for me to question why that decision was ever even made. There was definitely a better way to try to turn all these people against each other, like just have Abigail say that he kind of said something that made it sound like he didn't think he'd have to share the money with all these people by the end of the night. Anyway, to get to the truth, Frank thinks they need to start being a little bit rough with Abigail, which is also stupid based on who her dad is, and Joey isn't gonna let it happen.
She's not gonna kill me. I might be wrong, Frank.
It's so fun. But pretty quickly, Abigail decides she's tired of the shit show and does exactly what I assume she would have done as a human child and slides the cuffs off her wrist. And just to really drive home the whole vampire demon type thing, she gets back up in seconds after Frank shoots her in the head.
We kidnapped a fucking vampire. A ballerina vampire.
So they finally clock that she's actually Valdez, except Pete. poor sweet Pete.
What do we know about vampires? Like an Anne Rice or True Blood, Twilight?
Now, I appreciate any vampire movie that takes Twilight into consideration with its lore, but I feel like they're gonna go pretty classic here, just brutal and evil. Based on how the entire house shutters so completely from sunlight, I guess we're going a little bit more traditional there than sparkles. So Frank thinks they should just rush the room and kill her, sends Pete to file down some pool cues to make steaks and Sammy to find garlic.
I got him!
Sammy, those are fucking onions.
It's just so fucking good. But Joey's pretty sure they're gonna need a better plan for multiple reasons. For one, she has literally and mentally been running circles around them all night. And if they do somehow manage to kill her, they just completely lost any bargaining chip they had with Lazar, who, if this is his daughter, is probably much worse news. But they do eventually find her, dancing with Dean's headless body, which I just thought incredible touch. And she clearly could have killed them all super fast, but doesn't seem to want to. The most she does is stab the shit out of the Frenchman with his crucifix to show that it doesn't have any effect on her, then stabs Frank in the leg before letting them leave. Again, just having so much fun toying with them. So Joey's plan is definitely a little better. She could tell that the tranquilizer they used in the beginning actually worked on her, and she still has a dose of it left. Even though I don't think that logistically tracks, like if she has super fast physical healing, that should also apply to her body being able to process drugs way faster. Like she should theoretically be out of this in under a minute, but we'll allow it. Smart idea, but the dumb part is that they all split up individually, and whoever sees Abigail first would notify Joey, who could come knock her out. Guys, she took 3 of you on with ease. Splitting up is just making it easier for her to pick you off one by one. Also, you could not pay me enough to split up in this situation. But sure, they do it. And on this journey, Sammy stumbles into a pool of sludgy bodies, and it must be used fairly frequently because a lot of these are still flesh stumps, making it clear that this is just a thing that Abigail does frequently. Makes a big haunted house spectacle of eating her food. And while everyone's rushing to Sammy, Abigail sneaks up on Peter.
Vampire on my ass!
God, I love dumb, goofy muscle dudes. But they all manage to kind of get to the same area to fight her. They toss in some ballerina stuff here with her just for like some shits and giggles. I kind of wish they had done more with that as part of the plot because they use it as so much of the promotional material, but it's fun, I suppose. Of course, the syringe falls slightly out of reach in the scuffle. Sammy ends up bit. Abigail starts to fly with Frank's leg, but thankfully Pete holds her down just long enough to knock her out. So Sammy's obviously freaking out because, vampire bite usually means you turn, and best case scenario for her here is some horrible disease from getting human pathogen soup all up in the wound. So that's a little time bomb ticking away while they try to figure out what to do with her, basically trying to negotiate some way to get out of the house in exchange for her freedom.
We would never have taken you if we knew who your father was.
You did work for him, didn't you?
Yes, the reveal. Apparently, these were not randomly selected victims. Frank's the undercover cop who turned in some of Lazar's top guys who ended up being the ones killed in that Valdez story told earlier. He then abandoned his family not to keep them safe, but to continue his life of crime that he enjoyed so much while being undercover. Sammy is Jessie, who used to steal money from her parents before moving her way up the ladder before landing on Lazar. Frenchman here was muscle for a Quebec crime family that he ended up stealing from, and they happened to be connected to her father's empire. And Joey was a combat medic who got hooked on drugs, became a mob medic, and accidentally killed someone very important to Lazar's business. They don't end up telling us what Dean and Rickles did, but I'm assuming Dean probably did some petty level theft crime. And who knows about the ex-Marine? They also make special note that Joey ended up abandoning her son and still hasn't gone back since getting clean. And that reveals the one true honest thing Abigail said. Her dad has genuinely lost interest in her, and she seems to be doing all this to get it back, but it doesn't matter how many people she kills for him, how many legal messes she solves, he doesn't care. I guess the real fun is the daddy issues we found along the way. I honestly really don't like that angle of the movie, and it's a pretty big part for it, but it's fine.
This is just a game to her.
What can I say? I like playing with my food.
So she starts making deals. Whoever lets her out of the cage gets to live, which seems like some pretty obvious bullshit, but Pete wants to take his chances, so Joey shoots him, which was absolutely the right choice, but leads to some more dumb shit. She knows she can patch him up and has to leave the room to go get the equipment to do that, but Sammy refuses to stay back after being bit, which leaves Frank alone with Abigail, who will definitely act in his own self-interest. Like, why wouldn't you have just run to get the medic kit and then come back? Now, I really didn't think he was gonna open the cage because I feel like he knows that she'd kill him, but he's he's still negotiating to find a secret exit, which is apparently in the library. So he thinks that he's played her, but I probably would have assumed that she had set him up for some kind of trap in case he didn't let her out, but it's neither. She wasn't ever actually trapped. She just busts that door down, which makes total sense to me. It really feels like they could have been doing more to lock her down, like it's an ancient rusty elevator door. What did you think was gonna happen? But thankfully, it's daylight now, and Joey manages to bash open a window cover and Abigail's hand instantly explodes. I love a good instantaneous vampire explosion in direct sunlight. It's the instant counter to the sheer level of overpowered they are. But her hand almost instantly starts to grow back, so they rush to hide in the library that has the big open skylight and try to figure out how to deal with her or get out. So the new plan is to try to find a power source to short circuit the doors. And they once again split off. And while Sammy just didn't explode in the sun, she's apparently just been in standby mode for Abigail to take her over as a meat puppet. So while she's roaming with Pete, who trusted her because she hadn't turned yet, she starts to hear Abigail's voice in her head as her wound instantly heals.
You're mine.
Oh no, that's so creepy. Honestly though, any meat puppet scenario, the worst. And there goes Frenchman, too naive for this world. Super cool scene though, very brutal to know that she's not actually the one doing it, but probably aware that it's happening. Then she just starts dancing to Danzig's Blood and Tears, which honestly seems like a fitting song choice, but like whatever Abigail's doing, Sammy just does as like a mirror. Very interesting little scene add on there, but you know, Joey and Frank do finally come across them.
Sammy?
He's dead.
She got him.
The delivery is so good. All while she's like slowly starting to smoke up from the minor sunlight seeping in. So Joey figures out what's happening pretty fast and they run back to the library where Abigail had apparently been turned all those years before. Yeah, I guess this dude really just kidnapped a 12-year-old so he could have a kid. Forever. It ain't 18 years anymore, more like 18 centuries. But this interaction also lets them know that getting bit by Abigail means that she could pilot their bodies. Ooh, the literal instant full explosion, holy shit. Like she was running at them when they were bathed in full sunlight, so it seemed like this was probably already gonna happen, but this was just fun, like a nice little concentrated blast. And almost immediately that hidden door that Abigail mentioned earlier opens up and leads them to the control room they'd been trying to find where Lambert's been hiding out watching them the entire time, and surprise, he's also a vampire.
You're one of them! He's one of them!
No shit, Frank.
You know, it's so simple, but there's just something so satisfying about the continual slew of basic clapbacks in this movie. So he pulled them back here to make a deal with Frank. Lambert actually helped Frank with everything that went down with Lazar's men, which they figured out, and in exchange for not killing his family, he agreed to be turned to become Abigail's vampire's assistant. And he's sick of it, frankly. He wants to turn Frank so they can take out her and Lazar together and then take over the entire organization.
Fuck it. Bite me.
Giving us a very classic brutal turning scene. You know, he gets bit then has to drink Lambert's blood to complete the transformation and have his autonomy. And it is not glamorized at all. He just instantly starts puking up blood, which is presumably all of his living tissue in his body being expelled and replaced with venom and whatever else. Just super fun stuff. But instead of killing Joey like Lambert wanted, Frank kills him instead.
That's what set me up, you undead prick.
And it's not because he wants to team up with her. Oh no, the vampire stuff just amped up that shit selfish personality and he has no plans to let her go free. Great shot here though, just totally unhinged, covered in blood. But before he can do anything, Abigail wanders in, which leads to a nice little power flip when she doesn't realize that Frank's been turned, which distracts them just long enough for Joey to make it out of the room with her phone after opening all the doors but still can't seem to make it out of the walls, so she leaves her son a voicemail. So sweet, hopefully she hung up before he could hear the sounds of her being brutalized. And brutalized she will be. Frank has no plans to kill her, wants to make her his meat puppet so he can force her to kill her own kid, which is just next level unnecessarily fucked up. I get that you two butt heads, but geez. But because he didn't drain Abigail, she pops back up and offers to team up with Joey to take him out. Which still doesn't go great because, you know, she's just still a human. It seems like he's gonna finish the job properly this time as Abigail holds out her pinky, you know, to remind Joey of the promise she made to not let anyone hurt her. As if she can just pull herself off this spike that Frank stuck her to. As if that promise didn't go out the window after multiple murder attempts? I keep wanting some thematic follow through, but come on, guys. Anyway, Frank once again does not completely kill Abigail and bites Joey, thinking he's made her into his meat puppet. Which is dumb. You'd think he'd realize it would require a little bit more effort than just saying words to make it work. But Joey plays along with it pretty well, still doesn't manage to kill him, but gives Abigail just enough time to rally so they can stab him together.
The thing about being a vampire takes a long fucking time to learn how to do all the cool shit.
And explode! road. Never gets old. I love it. And Abigail actually sticks to her word to let Joey go. Thankfully, she won't have any vampire side effects because Frank is dead, and the two have a nice little moment about being a better parent.
For what it's worth, you just have to show up.
Because that's all it would take for Abigail's dad to make things right, which is conveniently when Daddy Dearest pops up to play. Played by Matthew Good of all people, I can't see Heck as a bad guy. But the movie has like 2 minutes left. They really just didn't do anything with him. I guess they probably felt like they had to show him, but I kind of wish it had had more of an impact than just a last minute swing by. I get that it's supposed to be some kind of logical follow through on the whole parent abandonment thing, but spoiler alert, it's not like we end up seeing Joey's kid. But he's obviously having a great time terrorizing Joey before Abigail steps in.
She was here when you weren't.
So now we're just in some like supernatural family drama, which I get is what the movie was going for, but it is the least interesting part of all of this, especially since we don't get any kind of fun lore dive with it. Like, I just don't know anything about them, so I don't care. Seeing the wall tapestry paintings was really cool. Like, give me some lore. Give me some lore. He's still really just like, oh, calm down, Abigail. I showed up when you needed me, ignoring the fact that she could have died twice if Dum Dum knew what he was doing and wasn't trying to draw it out. But then he realizes that she's actually hurt and he sucks, and he just lets Joey leave.
See you around, Joey.
What the fuck?
Fair reaction, honestly. And it ends with her finding one last piece of candy before hitting the road. And that's it, she just drives off, but it definitely feels like they left it open for some more potentially with that little see you around comment. Obviously, this makes way for a very clean ending as we have it, but I could absolutely see Abigail popping back up for some funsies or something in the future. I think some of that is just me feeling like the dad was just so horribly underutilized on screen just to have him pop up in the end for like 2 seconds. It's just not remotely satisfying. I really just feel like there had to be a better way to close this out. Either way, pretty decent movie, not a perfect one by any means, but it was a really enjoyable watch, and sometimes that's all you need. I still think that the ratio of dumb decisions is way too high compared to the smart ones for how many times they did the same dumb mistakes like splitting off. Joey believing Abigail about Frank being Valdez was just very dumb, and then this ending was just very weak, in my opinion. But overall, the movie's still a very easy recommend if you like horror movies, comedy-infused horror, or just vampire flicks. I feel like we've been getting a lot more flavor of vampire-related media lately, which is always fun for me, and I think it just struck a nice little in-between with horrific monster and fun little superpower guys. But that's Abigail. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts. Did you actually like the ending and the direction it took with the daddy issues? Which I don't inherently think is a bad idea. I just wish they had played that out better. But yeah, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments section down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below, and also my Love Lies Bleeding video is live. That had a lot of issues when it first uploaded, so a lot of people didn't see it. Just letting you know that it is there. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.